Welcome to Digitally Creative. I'm your host, Vincent Ferrari. Joining me this week is my good and longtime friend. You know him as the High Caliber Craftsman, but he's just Austin to me. It's my good friend, Austin Saunders. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, Vincent. What's happening, man?
Austin is, I don't know if you guys know this, but Austin is the epitome of digital creation. I mean, when I think digital fabrication and creation, I think Austin Saunders. Right, Austin?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's my MO.
I mean, so those of you that have been listening since I rebooted the show, you know that it's not always about digital fabrication, whatever. Sometimes it's just about content creation. And Austin is a troll slayer, which is one of my favorite things, and the master of GIFs, which is another one of my favorite things, especially if you follow him in any of the chats he's in. But he's also a podcaster, so I figure I can shoehorn those descriptions into fitting into this podcast. So
Yeah, and I mean, I figure like I'm doing digital recording, right? Video
yeah.
producing.
Content creation is digital creation as far as I'm concerned. And that's how I'm going to stretch it when I want to have someone on, but they don't fit into the mold of using a Cricut CNC or a laser. It's not bad, right? How you been, man? I feel like it's been a long time since we've spoken. I mean, other than, and obviously I won't talk about it on here, but other than the new product you're developing, which I'm so excited for, that I cannot wait until you start making them because I will be buying one immediately. I don't care what you charge for it. Oh, wait, that's stupid. Don't tell the guy making the thing you don't care what he's charging for it.
Oh, I've got a special prize for you.
Exactly. But what have you been up to?
Man, I've been just really focusing on trying to make some more tools. So I'm kind of course I make pens. That's my main gig.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of gearing up to doing some more tool making. So I'm making some leather mauls.
Mm.
I'm making the new, which we can talk about it. I'm making a new product that's going to be an X-Acto blade holder.
Oh,
So it's a redesigned X-Acto knife. And I'm trying to correct all the issues that make me hate X-Acto knives. So like
and there
it
are
coming
many.
loose and dropping the blade, or it rolling off a table and things like that.
My favorite thing, well, I always told Ethan with his X-Acto knives, right? The thing that I loved about his X-Acto, I mean, this is not to knock the craftsmanship of it, right? Because the craftsmanship of his X-Acto knives is chef's kiss. It's
Right.
beautiful. It's one of my favorite things. I was one of the people at the beginning that told him that's his killer product. He should start selling them. But I think what makes his X-Acto knife so good and why I've been using his so much is because the leather makes it more ergonomic.
Absolutely.
And I feel like the problem with X-Acto knives is they're all these they're basically dowels with a blade in the end of them, and they're all shitty to hold. They feel terrible, and you're fixing the other problem that people probably have and just accept it as the norm. I mean, aside from it rolling off the table, which I love that you're the way you're fixing that, but the big problem is, why don't you tell people the biggest problem that you're fixing and how you fixed it? Because I think it's brilliant. As soon as I saw it, I was like, I'm in. This is it. I'm sold.
Yeah. So the biggest problem to me is, and I don't know if it's just me, but like when I'm using an X-Acto, I spin the collet with my fingers somehow, and it basically releases the blade.
Hmm.
And normally it releases the blade when I'm like halfway stuck in a project, and now I've got a blade sticking out of a project that I'm trying to recover, you know?
Hmm.
And so my main goal was like, this thing cannot release. Like
Right.
I want a mechanical feature that makes this lock in. And so I'm doing it with a locking screw. It's like an Allen key screw, and I want it to be like the only way this would ever come out is if you took a pair of pliers and pull and just like absolutely destroyed it
Right.
to get it out.
You'd have to actually crack the blade to get it out,
Right.
essentially.
That's what I'm
And
shooting for. Yeah.
I think you know what, I realized how brilliant it was when you just said when you somehow spin the collet, and I realized that every time the blades ever come loose when I'm cutting a curve, it's because you kind of turn the blade in your hand a little bit.
Right.
And it doesn't take much to release that stupid clamp on the end of an X-Acto knife. And I just realized that the reason I don't have that problem with Ethan's is because he covers it with leather.
Right.
It's like now it's all clicking. Like, yeah, that's why it does. That's why it's not so much of a problem. But dude, I'm so excited about that because the X-Acto is one of those things that you use a lot. In fact, I stopped using most X-Actos. I only use Ethan's,
Me
or I
too.
use my maker knife because I don't like dealing with the knives themselves. I have like 5 X-Acto knives. They're all in a drawer. Like, screw it. I don't want to use them.
Yep, exactly. That's I use Ethan's, and it's the same thing. His leather makes it more ergonomic and comfortable to hold. And
hmm
I don't understand why they're making. I guess it's just cheaper to make them thinner like that. But
I think it's just the way they've always made them because, you and I were talking. You and I were actually talking about this. I said, Cricket makes the nicest X-Acto I've ever used,
right,
and all they did was make it a little bit thicker where you grab it and put some rubber on it. That's it. That's all they changed, and it's such a nice experience. And it's okay. It's $37,
okay,
but I would pay $37 for a tool that's comfortable and easy to use and nice.
right. Yeah, I
So
agree.
I feel like that's
Hopefully, people will pay more than 37 for it.
I think they totally will. It's funny because when I gave you the price, I'm like, "No, I hope I'm kind of in the ballpark here." And you told me that that was where you were looking to charge. I'm like, "Okay, good," because that's what I would pay for it. So we're
Right.
golden. But
Yeah, it's
uh,
always tough to price a product, especially when you're coming into a market that you're not exactly sure on, and your
sure.
competitive products are going to be like $3 or
Yeah,
four
that's what I was
bucks
gonna
on
say. You're
Amazon.
competing against essentially a commoditized product.
Right.
But you're doing, I mean, but you kind of do that with your pens too.
It's exactly the same. Yeah.
Your pens are kind of commoditized too, and yet people will still buy an Austin Saunders ridiculously expensive because it's beautiful pen.
Right. Yeah. That's
So
people always ask me they're like, so what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I make pens. And I'm like writing pens. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, can I get my business name on them? And I'm like, Not that kind. Like,
not like
that's not
thick
what I'm
sticks,
doing."
dude.
Yeah. What I need to do is be like, yeah, no problem, but you have to order 1,000, and then I'll just order it and dump it to them. but
It's people don't like nice people don't really like nice writing instruments anymore. Like they don't appreciate that thing. Like there's a certain class of people that appreciate the craftsmanship of it, so therefore they appreciate a really nice pen that's
right.
handmade and hand fitted and hours went into making it. It's kind of a lost art.
Yeah, it definitely you have your certain clientele, like I have got when I release a new style pen, it'll be like the same 5 people that buy the first 5. Like it's the same people over and over. It's your top fans or whatever you want to call them,
Mhm.
the people who really enjoy your work. So
Sure.
hopefully I can, convert some of them to buy some of these new products and or find some new versions of them to buy the stuff.
I like the idea of you making tools because a lot of machinists and people that do kind of the stuff you do don't seem to be doing as much of that. It's like they're doing parts of a bigger thing. Like, oh look, I remember I remember when you made the acorn nut with the router bit. I remember that was like I feel like that was a million years ago. It was like 3 years ago. But I remember watching you do that and going, "Wow." But that's the kind of stuff that most machinists seem to make. They don't make, you and AJ Huff is another one who the product is made on them is the machining. Like that's the
Right.
whole thing. It's kind of interesting watching you go as opposed because a lot of the machinists on Instagram I don't even watch because I'm not interested in watching how you make a spring. Like it doesn't
Right.
interest me. It's not
Yeah, it's
interesting.
as I enjoy womb to tomb, like
hmm
from scratch to finished product. So and I get messages all the time where people are like, "Oh, I need you to make this widget, like whatever it is."
hmm
And I'm like, man, that is just so not interesting to me at all. Like I want to be able to. It's almost like watching a movie and then the last 10 minutes being like, all right, that's good enough. Like I don't need to see the end. like you know, um, it's it's just not as interesting to me. And so, but that's what makes me a shitty machinist because most machinists can just sit there and grind the same part out all day, every day, and be happy with it. And I am not a fan of that.
You're I don't know, maybe I'm misreading it based on the stuff you make, but do you consider yourself more of one of those? Because I noticed that machinists seem to break themselves down along like two camps. You have your artsy guys who are doing like really artistic stuff and pretty stuff, and they're doing crazy knurling patterns and all that stuff. And you have the guys that are just like, I got this into 1400 thousandths, and it's like this is the
Yeah.
super crazy precision where you couldn't fit a hair between these gaps. Like where do you kind of see yourself in the machinist space? Are you more of the artsy guy, or are you more of the I'm an artsy guy, but I'm damn precise too? Like,
Well, no, I'm definitely not as precise. Like I'm as precise as it needs to be. Like
hmm
I feel like some guys shoot for zeros on parts that don't need to have zero shot at them. Like it's how about this? I'm the woodworker tolerance machinist.
I was just gonna say you have the tolerances. I was literally that was the next thing out of my mouth is you have the tolerances of a woodworker. Yeah, it's within a 30-second. It's fine. Like,
Yeah. Well,
good
maybe
enough.
not that big. I mean, that's pretty big.
See,
If
okay,
we're
now you're
within,
talking like a machinist.
yeah, there we go. If we're within like 5 or 10 thou, what's
That's not
that
bad.
between friends? I'm,
But
I'm like the TikTok machinist where it's close enough and I can put a filter on it. It looks real good.
I have to applaud you because there was a couple of oh my god, now I'm thinking about it, it's had to be about almost a year ago. Wow. I bought some stuff from Online Metals and I had no way to cut it. And you and I were trying to figure out a good way for me because I don't have room for like I really would love just a foot operated gigantic shear, but of course I don't have room for that. And I only got spoiled by that because I used one in Emily Joyce's shop. But I actually you helped me figure out a way to do it. And what I ended up doing, you're not gonna believe this, but to cut the bronze and to cut the brass, you know what I ended up using?
No, what?
A bimetal blade on my jigsaw.
Oh, there you go.
And I slowed the jigsaw all the way down, and it works beautifully. Like it cuts through it like butter. And I took the big sheet. I had a 12 by 12 by it was like 14 gauge, so it was really thick. For for jewelry purposes, it's
Right.
really thick. And I cut it into like 3-inch squares just so it was more manageable so I could bring it home and work on it on my jewelry bench. But yeah, you kind of had me looking at bandsaws and I was looking, I was like, this is kind of good, but I don't know if I need to spend that much. And then at one point in the conversation, you said you could just use a jigsaw with a metal cutting blade. And I'm like, yeah, I have a jigsaw and I don't use it for literally anything. I might as well use it for this. And wow, I have so much metal now to make jewelry with. So
Yeah,
you're
it's
like my
interesting
dear
how you
Abby.
can convert, you know, there's a lot of woodworking tools you can convert to at least work with metal, especially if you're using non-ferrous stuff. Non-ferrous is basically just like hardwood, but
Yeah.
um,
I'm
there's a lot of tools that can be modified.
I'm terrified. I really want to start working with aluminum on my on we have for those of you listening, we actually have the same CNC. Um, Me, Austin, and Jeff all got them at the same time. We got the same machines. I think I might have kind of convinced people to buy them, and Jeff is doing well with it. Austin hates it, but but I
Well,
really want to start doing aluminum, and I don't. I'm scared to death, and I know it's not dangerous. I know it's not going to hurt the machine. I know it's not even a big deal, but metal scares me as a woodworker.
yeah, I mean, the problem with aluminum is the galling, right? So it
Mhm.
like galls the router bit, and it basically just like welds aluminum to the router bit and turns it into a smooth, really fast spinning, high friction, non-cutting router bit. And so that's the first time I put something on the Shapeoko. Actually, I was trying to cut a plate for the Enlightenist challenge, and
Mhm.
I was doing for that lamp right there, actually behind me. And I was trying to cut a circle out of aluminum, and I was like, "Hey, we got this CNC. Let's throw it on there." And it immediately galled, and it just so when it galled, it also grabbed and just dove down into
Ooh,
like this half-inch aluminum plate, and it didn't snap the bit, but it just stalled the machine out.
really?
And I
So
was like,
what do you
okay, maybe I learned some more before I just hit go.
so what do you, I know to clean I know that when it gums up like that, I've heard of people using a lye solution, I think. They just drop
Yeah,
the
I
bits
just
in lye and it just eats it up. But so what do you do? Like obviously is it damaging the carbide like it's done? Like throw the bit away or is it
no,
just
yeah,
it
you could do like Winston. He would just like soak it in lye, but what I do is I take it out and then I throw it in the trash and I put a new one in, and then I'm not going to sit there for hours. It's you screwed up. You just pay the dummy tax and go to the next one.
Is it something you can avoid, or is it just a natural concept? I'm fascinated by this because I'm telling you, this is something I really have wanted to do for a while, and I'm feeling like I need to just get off my ass and start experimenting. And if I have to buy some cheap Chinese mills on Amazon, which I might, just because I don't want to wreck my good ones,
Sure.
just buy some cheap Chinese mills and just go for it and see how it
Yeah, and it
works.
you don't need carbide for aluminum. Like high speed steel will cut it. It's not
Brilliant.
Yeah, I
Brilliant.
mean, there's no reason. But so WD-40 is great for a
Hmm.
cutting fluid for aluminum.
Okay.
The problem is you're on like an MDF bed, and
Yeah.
that might run some issues. I am absolutely not an expert on machining aluminum in a straight Pepco. Now, in a lathe or a mill, I'm your man. But in a other controlled environment. So I'm sure that some people are running it and have some sort of coolant setup. But
Hmm.
you could also just use air blast, which would just be like a essentially using air as a coolant
Hmm.
and trying to keep it that way. So you could like squirt some WD-40 on your area and then use air blast, and it would probably stop it from galling. Also, it also if you're using like Fusion to do
Hmm.
your machining, like your controller. This is going to be me like talking out of school here because I have no idea what I'm talking about. But they can do like the ramped
Yes.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
decelerate, whatever it's
You
called.
do
I don't even know what
ramping,
it's called.
ramping into the cut and ramping out of the cut. Yeah. 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 So
Right.
you're
Where
only going, you go in a little bit and then down. So it doesn't just plunge straight in, which is what you don't want.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So, and that's with the Carbide Create software, it doesn't have that option. So,
It does if you have the pro version, which I do. It
oh,
does
okay.
have ramping. Yeah, you can tell it how much to ramp and how fast to go as it's ramping. So you can. The funny thing about Carbide Create is you have to pay for pro to get anything out of it.
Okay.
But it's worth it. It's $120 a year, and you get a lot for that $120.
Maybe that's
Um,
worth investing in because that's,
it really is, because it's decent software when you pay for the pro. It really is. As I'm
I'll,
a
have to,
fan.
I'll do a trial period. I'm sure they have a trial that you
They
can,
do. I think it's a 30-day trial. Might be a 60-day trial, but it's totally worth it. Even if you'd use it just for the STL import, it's worth it. Like that's a really cool feature. And there's extra stuff you can do if you have the pro version. I think it's in the standard version now, but there's extra stuff you can do with pro. But you can also do rest machining with pro, which you can't do without, which rest machining is everything. Like you don't even do multiple mills without rest machining. You're wasting your time. It's a
right.
massive waste of time. So I really do have to, I keep saying, I have, every time I look at that machine in my shop, it's like, okay, if you don't have any client stuff this week, this is the week where you really have to start getting closer to Jeff level and away from remedial CNC 101 level.
Right.
And I know how to operate the machine. I just don't have a project that needs it. And
Yeah. I
sometimes
mean,
I get lazy and use the laser.
sometimes you have to make the project up just to do
Hmm.
it, and you can write it off as content creation or whatever you want to do. But
It's not a
really,
bad
it's
idea.
just you going to school. Um, I do tons of those normally. Like it's like, oh, I should make one of these, and people are like, oh, are you making that for sale? I'm like, no, I'm just making it to make it to to learn, to see if I can make it. That's how the
Have you
razor
had
blade
any?
started.
I
So
was gonna say, okay, so okay. I was gonna ask if you've had any projects that you started as just why because I can type projects and that turned into something bigger.
yeah, that one I was like, I just had the idea over the weekend, and this is how I am. I'm like so scatterbrained and like ADD, where it's like I had that idea, and then it's
Hmm.
like it is all I could think about all weekend long. So on Monday morning, I was like, okay, I'm gonna spend 2 hours and figure this out, and then within 2 hours, I had a finished product. So, and I was like, wow, it's actually for a first rendition, it was pretty good. And then, um, of course, I have like my crew of people that I bounce ideas off of. You're in it, obviously. You
Hmm.
got one of the pictures at the beginning, and
Hmm.
Grant was in it. And I send it to Grant third because I want a couple attaboys first before he shits on it. So I send it to
Oh
him
my
third.
god,
I
that's
build
so
up my confidence level with two other people that I know I'll get a good response from,
you can be
and then I
ready for
send it.
Grant. You can be
Yeah,
ready for Grant by taking the positive stuff first. I,
right.
it's funny because I always try. Like you're very one of the things I like about you when you send something over. Like it's always something interesting. And you sent this one over to me, and I'm like, this is really freaking cool. Is there anything that looks like a shortcoming? I couldn't find anything. And I was like, wow, I guess I'm just gonna kiss his ass about this one because this is just flat out cool. So have you gotten
Yeah.
any feedback on it where somebody had other input other than like, yeah, that's neat. I would buy one of those or
Well, Grant's input, he's like, where's the Allen key going? Because I'm going to lose it. And I was like, well, so my first idea was let's 3D print a blade protector, and
hmm.
then have it where it holds the Allen key with the blade protector. right?
I always lose the blade protectors, though. I'm not
That's
gonna lie.
exactly what he said. He's like, so the first thing I do is throw that away. And I was like, well, you're going to throw away your key then. And he was like, can't you do something else with it? And I was like, man, okay, maybe I'll make it like a magnet on the back or something like that. But I hated the way everything looked.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna have to actually do work and make it where it's hidden inside the body of it. And so I ended up threading it and then turning the back screw piece into the actual Allen key um,
That was
itself.
the aha moment when I saw that, because I'm looking at it and I see what you're doing. Like, it's obvious what you're doing from even the still frame in the video, and I'm like, "This is cool. This is cool." And then you unscrewed the top to get the key to tighten the blade or loosen the blade, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm in. This is genius. Like, that's it. Like, I don't have to keep handy a number 1 heck and a number 1 Allen wrench or whatever size you ended up using on there."
Right,
Absolutely fantastic. Guys, and I'm telling you, wait till follow him on Instagram. Follow him on Instagram at High Caliber Craftsman Builds, and keep an eye out for when he starts posting about this, because you are absolutely going to want one, especially if you already have a like a Jimmy DiResta ice pick, because it's aesthetically it goes nicely. I have a Jimmy DiResta pick and I have an Austin Saunders pick,
right.
so
Yeah,
and I
that's
have like the brass tool collection.
yeah. See, I'm a sucker for brass, so
Me too.
I made it brass hex. Because
Mhm.
I was like, I love brass and I love the hex was the reason I wanted to use hex was so it didn't roll off the damn table. And
So, so practical.
yeah, and Grant was telling me he's like the beauty of you using that flat side is he's like you can lay the blade and use it as a scoring, so it gives you
Mhm.
like a certain depth off the table. So if you're like marking a round apart or something, I'm like, that's not a bad idea. Every once in a while, a blind Canadian finds a nut, and so he
Listen,
has a couple of good ideas on this progress.
if you could integrate a spirit level into it, it would be the perfect tool, and I would carry it with me. It wouldn't just be something that I use as a tool. Like, if you could carve a little trough and shove a spirit level in there, the way the ice picks have,
Oh yeah,
chef's kiss.
yeah,
I'm excited about this. Is one of the few things I've seen that's a tool that I actually, because I always see these cool tools and it's like, that's cool, but that's not a tool I really use enough to justify.
right.
Like, this is a tool I use the Exacto a lot. In fact, it's one of the few tools that's not across the room. It's right on the table that I work on all the time.
Yeah.
So,
So I want to. I'm thinking I'm going to try to do a Kickstarter with it, and then to fund me getting a fiber laser. Um,
mhm.
and the reason I want a fiber laser is so I can make cooler tools. you know.
Get a
And one
fiber
of the
laser with some kind of rotary on it, and then you could really kick some ass.
exactly that's what I'm
Yeah.
after, and I wanted to, and so even for that the I don't have a name for it yet, but the blade holder I want to do where I can laser engrave some like a scale, like a rule on the side of it. So it's there if it just add one more element. So I do it in imperial, and then also put the wrong metric on the other side if somebody wanted that.
I just sent you in our Instagram chat. I just sent you the name. You're welcome. That's your name.
That's awesome. That's really good. That's really good. I'm totally gonna steal that. I'll
There you
trade you for
go.
the one I gave you earlier.
Fair enough. Okay, all
Okay,
good, all good. We both have ideas now. That's I just it hit me while we were chatting. I'm
that's
like, oh, the
money. I
name is
love it.
obvious.
I
So,
love it. Perfect.
yeah, no, this is really good. I love watching. See, a product guy gets excited about stuff like this, right? Like, a product guy. You are definitely a product guy, and I
Yeah.
I hear, like, when you talk about the little components that go into a product and the little details that make the product really perfect. I like that enthusiasm, because it tells me that this isn't just something you're making to sell. This is something you're making that you're basically putting your reputation into when it
Right.
goes out the door, and I respect that tremendously.
You know what's also super cool about making tools is I'm making something so somebody else can make something.
Mhm.
And then I think it's almost like making Inception, right? Like because then I later I get tagged in their photos where they're making some. It's kind of like I get to like it's almost like like what I assume having grandkids is like because it's like your thing that you made is now making things over there, like right. So
That's the
like
craziest analogy I've ever heard, but I love it.
right. So like I get to see like the generational of making things down the line, which I think is just really cool. And it's cool to be a part of somebody's workflow, especially when they're like, "Man, I use this all the time and I love it." So I don't know, that gets me jacked up. I like that.
Yeah, I remember when you made, was it Ethan that got the first leather mall? Or,
Yeah,
somebody
so I built myself one, and then he
uh
got the first one I ever made that as as a product
so
for somebody.
beautiful. So
Yeah,
beautiful. And I, I unapologetically voted for you in the mallet challenge that you had with Dean because I just thought it was just such a beautiful design. And I'm a sucker for, I hate to say it because it's a little old fashioned now, but I'm a sucker for stacked leather.
yeah.
Like, oh, stacked leather is just bay. Like I just love stacked leather.
It works so good as a handle material for stuff like that too, because it absorbs the hit. It's like
Mhm.
the old East Wing hammers.
That's what well, that's why, because my dad always had Estwing hammers, and they always had that, the white and black the white and black plastic, and then the rest of it was all the stacked leather. In fact, I have the, Duresta skeleton knife, and my first stacked leather project is gonna be making an Estwing style handle for that knife. Like, that's what I wanna do, and the reason I haven't done it is because I wanna do it right.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
which
it's cool. They're fun to make. I'm turning my leather on the lathe, which is interesting because it
well, that's wild.
turns different than everything every other material I've ever used.
Did you, like, soak it in, like, an epoxy first to make it easier to turn, or did you just turn it raw?
So I made a jig that I can glue the stacked handle up together,
Mhm.
and then I use a threaded rod with two big aluminum, basically like gigantic aluminum washers, and then nuts on each side, and that's what clamps it together while I'm gluing it. And I did a
Ah,
test of I did a total boat epoxy, and then I also did just Type Bond 2. And the epoxy definitely holds more, like holds it
mhm.
together more, but it made it so rigid and so uh not as hand like the hand feel wasn't as good. That's a really bad
Right.
description. Like, it
No, it
just
makes
didn't
total
feel
sense.
as good. Yeah. And so now I just use Type on 2, and it turns great.
I
It's
reckon it probably soaks in better too, so, like, resin would probably sit more on the surface, but the Titebond, since it's water-based, would probably soak into the leather a little better.
Yeah, I think both of them soak in because I'm using veg tan, so it's like just drinking everything. Like,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable the amount of glue I have to use because it's just like it's just sucking it in.
Mhm.
And I at first when I first started doing it, I was like, I had a little cup and I was like dipping a brush and brushing it on. And now I literally just dump glue on the table and just throw all the leather in the glue and then
That's a
start
good idea,
assembling.
but you
Yeah,
gotta work fast.
you have to work fast, yeah. And so like all my metal pieces that are the clamp, I paste wax them all up with
Mhm.
Johnson's paste wax, and so it's like a mold release basically. And when it comes out, you hold it in your hand. You're like, "There's no way this is leather." Like, it feels like a baseball bat. Like,
It's
it's so
wild.
tough. Yeah. Um, and it's cool. And then when you turn it, your whole shop smells like a leatherworking shop, which is way better than a machinist shop smells.
Yeah, the only thing that ever sucked about leather for me was putting it in the laser. Because I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
smelled laser burnt leather, but it ain't pleasant. It's
Right.
not pleasant at all. That one of the things that I feel like, oh my god, you would love to have one, having a laser, and I know you don't have one yet, but man, if you had a laser, cutting the stacked leather would take you seconds. It would just be like lay out the shape and go for it. I mean,
It
I've seen so many people do leather stacked stuff, and then they put a whole hide of leather on their laser and just cut, 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 done.
It would be so nice to have. Yeah, and it would speed me up a lot. So my malls, I like right now, actually, I've never actually released them for sale. I've sold all of them before I've been able to release them because people hear about it and then they
Because
kind
they're
of DM me.
beautiful. They're beautiful, and you've taken some hella nice pictures of them, and you
Yeah.
you you've basically acted as your own PR department.
Well, half your job's making it, half your job's selling it, right? So,
Yeah, you're right.
um, but so eventually they will make it to my website when I have some for sale. And when I get to that point, it would be excellent to have a laser. See, but the problem is like I'm in the realm right now where I'm like I want a CO2, but I need a fiber, so I
Right.
kind of need both.
What blows my mind is that you're seeing UV lasers that are super cheap now, and I don't know. Is it UV? Is that or IR? It was one of the 2. It's relatively new to me, so and I'm starting to see lasers, and they almost do what a fiber laser does, but they're, like, cheap. Like, whereas a fiber may cost you 15 for a certain size, these cost, like, 6 or 7, and they pretty much have the same functionality. Like, I always call it the fingernail test. Like, if you can run your fingernail over something and feel it, then it engraved. And,
Okay,
then you're good. As long as you can feel it with your fingernail, that's deep enough for most needs. But then there's also, like, even Chris just reviewed a couple of months ago, was it Atom Stack? I think it was Atom Stack, or one of them made a fiber laser that sits on your table that's like $1,400.
I saw that.
And it's like, wow, like, I was looking at fiber lasers that were $9,000, $10,000, like, because I really, really I'm the same way, like, making metal jewelry, fiber laser would be a godsend. Cut a pattern out on it and then cut the shape later by hand. I don't even need the laser to cut it, I just wanna put patterns on stuff. It's remarkable how much they've come down. So,
Yeah, I'm hoping for I'm hoping for a massive swing where they come down even more, so I can afford a higher wattage.
mm.
That's
You don't need
wattage
a
is
lot
the
of
key.
You don't need a lot of wattage though. That's the weird thing with a fiber. Like, you look at some of them and they're like 50 watts and they'll engrave copper. And you're doing all non-ferrous stuff anyway. Like, they'll do copper, bronze, brass.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna do
Bra-
steel, but
brass is the tricky one because it like absorbs. You have to
mm,
have. So like I've been looking at the Omtex, and
mhm,
when you get up around the 60 watt, it can actually do a little bit of thickness in brass, but
mhm,
under that, I think it just struggles. I don't know.
yeah.
I'm not knowledgeable enough to know exactly why, but I am knowledgeable enough to know that I want the biggest, baddest one that takes the least amount of time to get it done because I'm impatient.
So now I have a question for you, and then this is not an insult, but this is something that, I know about you and the way you work. Part of this is going to be, once you get that machine, you're going to have to really buckle down with design software. And I know technology is not your best friend. I mean, I was telling, I think it was last week or the week before, I was talking about you wanted that U cut on on your CNC for your what was it for the press fit station that you have? Was that what it was for? Or
Oh no, that was for yeah, it was for I was making these little doghouse things.
okay,
They look like a doghouse, yeah.
and you wanted that done, and I was like, and I actually did it for you, and I don't mind, by the way, this is not me going, "Ha I had to do that for you." It's not
Oh
that.
yeah.
But it's just, I'm wondering, like, does this mean you're gonna have to, like, figure out some design software now? Like, because I know
I have
I
this design software figured out where I it's called Tex Vincent.
oh, fair enough. That's good design software. It's the funny thing is Text Vincent actually is very cheap. Um, it comes in the form of advice or random questions about how to cut something, or maybe machine an anvil. Like, that's really about all that Text Vincent actually ever needs. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good.
I so the last time I was semi decent with Illustrator was like Illustrator maybe like 9 is when
Yeah.
I was, like
A, l-
2000,
a
2001
lot's
something.
changed in the last 4 years, by the way. Just in the last 4 years, it's a
Right.
very different piece of software. So,
I need to buckle down and learn it. I
mhm,
um I feel like sometimes it's I don't know, it's weird cuz like if you just put a machine in front of me, like a manual machine, like
mhm.
whatever, and you're like figure it out. I have no problem figuring it out. But when you're like put a computer between me and the machine and you're like figure it out now, I'm like I think my brain is just too like I sit down at the computer and then within 15 minutes I'm like that's probably enough. Let's get out of here and go do something else, like I just can't sit in front of the computer like that. And I've been trying to learn Fusion, and I've restarted the course 4 times, and it's just I don't
Which
know,
course?
man.
Which course are you taking? Just curious. You taking Bob's
Uh,
or
no, it's this guy on YouTube. Oh man, I can't even remember his name now. But it's like
Lars? Lars Christensen?
I think so. It
Yeah.
was like one a day. You do like
If
one
you say it's
project
a
a
guy
day.
on YouTube, it's got to be Lars Christensen.
I think it's one a day, and
Yeah.
then you start out with like a Coca Cola bottle, and or it's like the third day. That's where I got to was the Coca Cola bottle, and I was like, I don't know, man. Like this
Uh,
is
so I'll recommend. I always recommend the first course I think people should take in Fusion 360 is not for everybody, because it doesn't do what everybody necessarily wants to do. But the one thing it does do is it gives you really good foundational knowledge.
Right.
whatever you're going to do later. In fact, that's where I got most of my foundational knowledge. I mean, obviously I was self-taught, and then I took it further because of this course. This course filled in the gaps. But Vladimir Mariano's from Desktop Makes, he has a course, Fusion 360 for 3D printing. And I know you're not going to be 3D printing with it, but what he does do is over the course of, I think it's 8 projects or 10 projects, each one is its own unit, and each unit will really, really, you use all the basic tools that you're ever going to need. All the basics are covered. If you want to take it further, you're going to need a more advanced course. There's no doubt in my mind. But what this will do is this will give you the foundation so that when you come to a need for an advanced tool, it's not going to be like, what do I do with this? Like, what does this advanced tool do? Like, it's a, it gives you 3 steps before you use the advanced tool, and you don't know what any of those tools do either. This course fills in all the early steps, like the basic formation of a project. That's what he's really, really good at. I would highly recommend it if Fusion is something that you are really, really trying to learn. Also, I mean, Bob's course was very good. I don't use a lot of the stuff I learned in the course, but I also know how now, right? So, like,
Right.
if you said design a piece of furniture using Fusion 360, I could. I don't do that, but I could do that,
Right.
but yeah, Fusion 360 is just an amazing piece of software that just, without a little bit of guidance, is useless.
Yeah, I feel like it was like drinking from a fire hose, like
Yes.
drinking from a fire hose. It was
Yeah.
just I'm like, is there like a dummy version of this that I could use to start, and then like turn off almost all the features, and then let's roll into it. Like that would be the helpful
I
technique for
learned
me.
I barely, and it was only because I was thrown into the fire and had to figure it out. That's how I had to learn Adobe Illustrator. I didn't have time to take a course, right?
Right,
So basically, my Adobe Illustrator knowledge was I have to get this done for work. And then constantly, when I wasn't at work, watching a million different YouTube videos from people that do cool stuff on how to do it, like how to use Illustrator, how to use. And again, it was the same stuff. It was the foundational knowledge that I just didn't have. And once I got those foundations down, even if you only have the basics and you're not getting into the advanced tools, you can kind of fake knowing what you're doing,
right.
which honestly, I hate to say it, but that's what most of us are doing anyway. We're just faking knowing what we're doing. None of us really know everything.
Did you find that because before this we were talking about your tablet? Do you find that a tablet makes Adobe Illustrator way easier to use?
No, I find, honestly, so it's very interesting that you asked that. I rarely use, I have a Surface Laptop Studio, which is a convertible. So I have the best of both worlds. It's a laptop, and then if I crack the back and fold it forward, it's a tablet. And I never use the tablet for Adobe Illustrator.
Okay,
Never. I prefer mouse and keyboard or trackpad and keyboard. For Photoshop, for Fresco, for those apps, I almost can't use a mouse anymore. Like, I have a Wacom tablet on this computer that I'm recording on right now, and that's my preferred way to use. I almost don't use Photoshop with a mouse anymore. If I have to use a mouse with Photoshop, it feels wrong.
right.
Like, I don't even remember, like, the muscle memory isn't even really there anymore. So, but no, I don't like tablets with Illustrator. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because the mouse just feels more precise. And the tablet, if I'm doing Photoshop stuff, it's usually touch up or art or trying to simulate brushes or painting, whatever. That's what it's made for. But yeah, I
Right.
don't I don't love it for Illustrator. There are other people. I know, I'm Caleb Gagne on YouTube. When Illustrator for the iPad came out, it was like somebody lit a fuse under him. Like, he was so excited. He does more Illustrator for iPad videos now than he does Illustrator videos, and like whole projects, which blows my mind. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's definitely it's so cool to watch somebody that's like in their element, and you're
yeah,
like, wow, that's insane. Like,
yeah.
it when I used to build boards, that's how like I knew all of it, right? So like if
Hmm.
you came in and watched, it it was very smooth. There was no wasted movement. That's the main thing. Like, you can tell somebody who knows what they're doing when there's no wasted movement.
Hmm.
Like, they're doing everything, the least amount of things to make a job complete, right?
Sure.
And I feel like I don't have that anymore, and because I'm always jumping into like such random projects and all over the place, I
Hmm.
don't have that anymore. But
But you have that. You probably have that at Christmas time when you're hitting your rush for pen orders.
Oh yeah, well pins is I have
Yeah.
that for pins for sure
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we're
yeah.
just
See, that's the thing. You probably
rolling.
have it. You have it for the stuff like that where you're in production. Your mind just doesn't automatically switch to production mode. That's the problem, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be in production mode most of the like that production mode is not no fun mode. That's just
Mhm.
grinding, you
It's
know.
just work.
Yeah, it's like I watch my kids play these video games. Like he plays this one. It's called Kaiju Universe. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's on Roblox,
Okay.
and I'm like, this game is just all it is you're just grinding. It's just grinding all the time, and I'm like, this is so not me. Like I don't know.
I got Pokemon Violet for the Nintendo Switch. I got it. It was my thing of the week like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I love the game. Okay. I love anything Pokemon. I love there are certain franchises where whatever comes out, I'm into it. I love this game. Okay. I really do. I enjoy it. I find it fun. I think it's awesome. But here's the problem. The first day of playing that game, because it is essentially a role playing game. You're building up experience, you're collecting Pokemon. At the beginning, everything you find is something to collect, so that's a little bit of fun. But when you go into a battle and you get beat by the base level bad guys because they're just wandering around in the grass, it's not fun. And
Right.
you have to just keep catching those little guys and making small incremental upgrades and small incremental upgrades. So that grind, I can't freaking stand it. I can't stand it. I don't know how people like I know people that play all the Pokemon games, you know. I know someone that plays Pokemon Go and she's a level 40. That's 10 levels ahead of me. And I'm like, I'm looking at these levels and I'm going through them as like I'm really grinding hard to catch up. Like I don't how do you get to 40? Like, you know, your next upgrade level is 2,000 experience. How do you
Right.
get 2 million experience rather? How do you get 2 million experience? I'm at like a 200,000 per level. It's just a grind. It's I don't have it in me either. Is really what I was trying to get around to also. So I totally can relate to the not loving the grind part.
Yeah, I just so that's why I'd like to get into the more into the more digitally creative side is
Mhm.
in the CNCs into the more where I can eliminate that
Mhm.
grinding from my daily work, right?
Sure.
As much as
Let the
possible.
robots do it.
Right. I want to be the one who creates and I'll create the first one on manual machines. Like I love that. Like
Mhm.
that's me problem solving and shooting it and then when I find something that's pretty close, then let's draw it up and get an infusion. Let's not waste our
Right.
time. You know, I feel like that's probably not how most people work, but that's how I would approach it. You know, I feel like a lot of people would design it first and then go to the machine, but I kind of like design in
You also have a skill set that lends itself to it, right? Because the average person can't walk over to a lathe and make a thing. You know, I used the example earlier of the round over bit used to make an acorn nut,
right.
right? Now you've probably done that a million times. You
Sure.
probably that's not even like a big deal to people like me. And I remember when you did it in the Makers on Zoom group. I remember everybody reacted the same way to it. Like, wait, you can do that? Like, it was such a mind f to watch you, you know, spin out a nut. Like, oh wow, he just made a nut. Like, all right, game
Yeah.
on, dude. You
It's
know,
funny because you take something like that people you almost like take like hardware for
a
granted.
100%.
Nobody knows how it like it's almost like we don't know how it's made. We just buy it at the store.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, you can just make it real quick. Like if you have the stuff, just make it. And um, I think that kind of throws people into a loop. And then the other thing is when you use woodworking tools to cut metal, people are like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, carbide's carbide, man. It's all about relief angles, you know.
Yeah.
So
And speed. I
right,
remember. See, this is how little like woodworkers know about this stuff. I remember when we were talking about cutting the stuff that I bought from Online Metals. And I said, "Well, I think that I don't know if my bandsaw can go fast enough." And you're like, "Yeah, that's not the problem. It's got to go slower." And I'm like,
right,
"What?" Like I was so confused. Like, wait, you got to go slower? Like in woodworking, everything is like I need it to go faster, faster, faster because you know, faster it goes, the cleaner it cuts. And in metal, it's almost the opposite. Like if you could just forge at it with one tooth every 3 seconds, like that would actually be the ideal situation.
right. Yeah, it depends on size and material and stuff
Sure.
like that. But
Sure.
Yeah, steel especially, it's got to slow down. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere.
It's wild, man. It's so funny the gap of knowledge between metal and wood. Like, you don't knowing both is impressive. Like, really seriously, knowing both is impressive because there's a really it's a, almost they're almost running opposites. Like, you don't work the same way. Woodworking is generally subtractive, whereas metalworking is generally additive. Um, you're rarely grinding away large quantities of metal, whereas with woodworking, you're almost always cutting away something.
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like for a fab shop, obviously you're welding new metal on all the time.
Yeah.
Machine shops are more reductive, but also at the same time, it's so expensive. So you're trying to do the least amount of reduction possible
Well, and
because
that's the other yeah, that's true.
yeah,
You guys as people as metal machinists, there's waste is a killer. Like, woodworkers, we throw away we throw away a tree's worth of wood every year. You guys, one Ziploc bag full of scraps, and you're annoyed with yourself.
yeah. So like brass is so expensive now.
Hmm.
I used to never keep anything,
Hmm.
like any chips, any offcuts. I would I just I don't know. Maybe I'm just a bad person. I just throw it away because I'm like, it's not worth the time. But
Hmm.
now, like especially making these mall pieces, there's like few parts where I have a decent amount of waste, and so now I'm recycling it. It's got
Are
to be
you,
because
were you just dropping it in the forge and like dropping it in the forge and remelting it, or?
so I have a foundry, but what
Mhm.
I'm doing right now is I'm building up the stock. I'm just holding it, and then I'm gonna cast it into billets so I can use it.
Perfect. That's
And
perfect.
then once I learn fusion, I will be 3D printing myself some patterns so I can do sand casting and do some really
Perfect.
cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to give you a piece of advice, by the way. If that's what you want to do, I'd almost not recommend you learning Fusion. I hate to say it. I would almost recommend you learn Blender instead.
Okay.
If you're doing stuff to make negatives for sand casting, like I'm guessing you're talking about like putting it in a flask and using Petrobond, like that kind
Yep.
of stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
So if you're going to do that, I'd probably recommend you learn Blender instead because it's more geared towards sculpting and it's a little more natural as far as you basically start with a primitive that's usually some form of a lump of clay,
Right.
usually either a ball or a cylinder or a triangle or a square, and you just carve away at it with the tools. You might get more out of that than you would out of Fusion 360 because Fusion
Okay.
has sculpting tools, but they're not as good as Blender.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that, so I'll have to check it out.
Oh, dude, Blender's great. And the one thing you'll love about Blender, there's a guy on YouTube called Blender Guru, and everyone that uses Blender and everyone listening that's used Blender is going to know what I'm talking about. But you'll make the donut. Everybody's made the donut at some point. I made the donut. I know. I think it was Derek from Derek from Brain Rhodes PC made the donut. We've all made the donut. You'll make
Right.
the donut, and once you make the donut, you're going to feel like you could do everything, and you're going to realize you still can't do everything, but at least you understand what you don't know.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think Blender is probably more what you're looking for because then you could also do it's better at doing like organic shapes, like rounded stuff, smooth stuff. It not as Fusion I use for like mechanical stuff. Like if I want something precise and angular, like if I want to take up my logo, for example, and I want to make it, extrude it and make it 3D, I would use Fusion for that. But if I wanted to make like a tree or design something that I would cast later on, I would probably do it with Blender. So
Cool.
and then you can oh my god, I mean, do you have a 3D printer or no?
I have access to a 3D printer. I don't have it in my
Because
shop.
you can get even for FDM printers, the kind that use filament, you can get wax filament.
Mhm.
And then I've seen people do like print something in wax and then take some strands of the wax just to make sprues and attach it to the model and then put it on the tree and put it in the flask and do all their casting that way. So you have a lot of options. You have a lot of options.
Yeah.
Especially with
I've
wax, it'll just burn out when you pour the metal in anyway.
Right, and I've seen guys using the PLA. They're
Mhm.
like a lost PLA, but they're doing it for Damascus now. So
Yeah.
like in canister Damascus, and it's wild. It's wild.
It is
What
crazy.
is possible now?
It is crazy, and these are the stuff we're talking about. You don't need high end tools for it. I watched a guy do electroforming, and he was using the models he was working with started on an Ender 3, which is probably the cheapest 3D printer you can buy at this point. And he was doing electroforming with it, and he would just basically print out the model, take it out, sand it as much as he could, cover it with graphite, and then put the copper on it, and it was done. And it was just like, whoa, that's cool.
Yeah, that's wild, man. I can't wait until metal 3D printers are attainable, like for a hobbyist.
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw an SLS printer, I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like the idea that you could just shoot a laser beam into a pile of dust and
Yeah,
fabricate something, and you can make stuff that's suspended in other stuff without supports. Like,
yeah,
but I feel like the future, we'll talk about something in my thing of the week, obviously, that is definitely the future, whether you like it or not. But I feel like the future is the stuff that we all thought was well off in the future is starting to happen faster and faster. Like stuff that as makers we've predicted, or wish list stuff that we've always wanted, we're starting to see show up. It's kind of crazy. I mean, when you have an AI that can write a term paper for you, and you know, and it's not, by the way, these AIs, the crazy thing about these AIs, they don't understand what they're writing. They use models to determine language. Like they know, like, oh, if somebody's saying this, this is how they say it. They don't know what they're saying. They have no idea. They
right.
start with a nugget and then they use, predictive language models to come up with how to say it. And it's like, damn, this is incredible. Like it's an amazing time to be alive. I feel lucky to be part of it, like, to have all the experience I've had before all this, and then watch all this evolve and watch everything I do just evolve away.
Yeah, I feel like if you had to like stamp a time that was like, so like like BC and AD,
Mhm,
I feel like now it would be like BI and AI, and it's like
mhm.
before iPhone and after iPhone.
Yeah,
Is like where things went crazy.
sure.
um, because like my grandfather, he started uh, when he got drafted into the army. He was working on prop planes. He was born when a Model T first rolled out. Then he was drafted and he was working on prop planes. And when he retired, he was working on F-14s. Like
Wow,
that is a gigantic swing
that's
of a
incredible.
person's life, right? And we allegedly landed on the moon somewhere in there also. And
Allegedly.
yeah.
Suckers. Who believes that?
and and now I'm like, everybody says like, oh, we're not going to have that kind of crazy advancement. I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, not that kind of advancement, but we have our own light
Oh, but
years of
it's
advancement in different things that
but
are not like that.
Yeah, but here's where it's different, right? And this is what people don't understand. Yeah, you're not going to have a jump from, the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk to an F-14. You're not going to have that jump, right? That jump is done. Even a
Right,
jump from an F-14 to Elon Musk going to space is not as big a jump. It's just a different shaped vehicle with more power, right? That's all
right,
it's not a real change. What you are having is a lot of smaller changes that we aren't even thinking about.
right,
And I come home at night and the lights in my house are on, not because they're on a timer, but because they know I'm home.
right,
All the light, like the light in my living room and the light on the front of my apartment turns on because it knows I'm in the area and I'm coming home, and it's lit up for me. In my old house, everything was on some kind of smart system where when I went to bed, I would open up my phone, I would hit good night, every light in the house would shut off, and the front door would lock.
that's
like
awesome.
and you may not look at it as, oh yeah, because that's not as life changing as learning to fly. You're right, it's not, but it's way more pervasive. All these little changes that we aren't even really noticing are all just appearing. When I go to my TV now, I don't have cable. I have YouTube TV, and when it suggests a show I might watch, you know what? It's pretty good. Like it knows, hey, this is what you watch. You might like this too. You know what?
Right,
Yeah, you're right. I would like that.
yeah, the algorithm provides.
Yeah. Hey, you watch a lot of WWE and battle bots. Hey, you might like AEW too. And you know what? I started watching AEW because YouTube kept suggesting, like, yeah, this is pretty good too. Okay, cool. Something else to watch.
Right. Yeah, it's
So,
funny. As far as like that and the algorithm, TikTok for me, like after being on there for a month,
mhm.
I'm like, this this app knows me. Like
Yeah,
it hits me with just
it's sticky.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
sticky. And the more signals you give it, the stickier it gets. I mean, Instagram Reels, I mean, I watch more Instagram Reels than I do TikToks, but I will say when I'm on TikTok, if I give it signals that I like something, I'm gonna see a lot of that stuff, which
right,
it's just much better than anything else I watch at giving me what I've already told it I like.
right,
Much better. And that's what makes it sticky. You know, everybody's trying to figure out why is TikTok so sticky? Because it listens.
right.
That's
Because it
the answer.
listens
Because it listens.
probably
Like,
way too much.
well, I mean, yeah, that's funny. There's a little more answer in there than I realized, but yeah. It's like, "Oh, no, we want access to your mic, your camera, your location, your contacts." Like,
Right.
Jesus. Why don't I
Yeah.
just I'll send it to the Chinese Communist Party. It'll be fine. You don't have to ask. Just
Right.
but yeah, no, it's I think, the example of your grandfather is a good one. I think, but even what we've been through, when you and I were born, and you and I are about the same age. You're a
Yep.
little bit younger, but we're about the same age. When we were born, computers weren't in every house.
Right.
I remember when I was growing up, they would tell you, you have to this paper has to be typewritten, right? And what did that mean? That means your mom or your dad would go into the closet and haul out this suitcase
Yep.
and throw it on the kitchen table with this super onion skinny thin paper, and it'd be like, all right, clack, clack, clack. That was
Right.
typewritten back then because people didn't have computers. And I remember I used to have access to my grandfather's computer before I had one. And I used to go to his place and I used to type my papers, and I would hand them in dot matrix form with the tractors torn off the paper. And it was like, oh, look what we just accomplished. We just computer wrote a paper,
Right.
you know?
Life
And that
changes
was
stuff back then.
and that was crazy. Like, it's like, oh, you have access to it wasn't even a computer. It was like, you have access to a printer?
Right.
Oh my god. you
Yeah.
know, and forget it if like your mom worked in an office and had access to a laser printer. Ho ho ho. You want to talk about BDE? Hand in your paper done on a laser printer.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, that's, just even technology that way. Like, I could sit here and I can run my entire business on my phone. I don't have to sit at my computer. Like, I can manage inventory, I can print a shipping label from my phone. It's like, I mean, if I want to use a computer, I usually do want to use a computer. But and
Isn't it weird how like and I know everybody's probably not this way, but I love the new technology and I love all these new things that are coming out. But then there's a soft spot for me for like these machines that are from the 1940s and or 50s and like I don't know if it's just nostalgia. All right, this is a perfect example, but it has nothing to do with it. The other day, we ate Pizza Hut, and
Mhm.
I was like, "Wow, this is trash pizza." But it was so good, and I think it was just hitting on nostalgia. It
Sure.
wasn't. It wasn't anything about how it actually tasted, right? And I think so. Even for like the old tools and stuff, I have a spot for that where I just love them. Like
Oh, yeah.
I love the idea of taking like there's probably a guy just like me 50 years ago that made his living on this machine and there's no way he would ever think that 50 years from that time that there's another guy making his living on that machine, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know, I feel I have a weird soft spot. I know everybody's probably not like that, but
I have that same soft spot, but in a different way. Like, as someone who's really into graphic design and someone who's really into the design of things, almost more so than the actual thing itself, I really love how artistic the old stuff looked. Like
right,
that typewriter, I was just talking about typewriters in a suitcase, right? Well, I remember my mom and dad, they had the typewriter. Go get the typewriter. And you would go get this gigantic suitcase and you'd slap it out on the table and you'd unclip it, and the whole top of the suitcase, you just put that on the floor because the bottom of it was what held the typewriter. But that typewriter was beautiful. It was
right,
like a mint green color, and it had these swoopy, beautiful Art Deco lines, and it just looked cool as hell because they didn't make utilitarian stuff in the 40s and 50s. Everything was designed to be beautiful and modern. That's why mid-century modern is so big with people, because it was just for the sake of being beautiful.
Right.
There was no additional function to making a kidney-shaped coffee table. It was just beautiful. They're just beautiful tables, splayed pointy legs and, just God, just go to Chris Salomone's page. Just look at anything he makes. There's no functional reason to make anything that looks the way he makes it, but it's beautiful stuff.
Right.
And it
Sometimes you
was
make art for art's sake, right?
Yeah, I mean, they made refrigerators that look like the cars of the time, which
Right.
always blows my mind. Like, everybody jokes about the mint green appliances in a '50s kitchen. Yeah, but look at the cars. You had a mint green '57 Bel Air on your driveway that matched your mint green stove and your mint green refrigerator with chrome all over it. So,
Right.
and it
It's
was just
awesome.
beautiful for the sake of being beautiful. So, which is why I bought a couple of different 1940s and 1950s things. Like I have a lamp, I have an old like a Polar Cub fan, like all this stuff that I want to just restore. Um, oh, I love those staplers. I love those. They work so well, so
Yeah.
much better than a traditional stapler. Oh,
So this is a swing line number 3, and
mm-hmm,
it's the Art Deco casting and everything. And I bought this because I was like, I just loved the casting.
mm-hmm,
And the lady's like, "Oh yeah, it doesn't work, but here, you can have it for $10." I'm like, "For $10, I'll make this thing work." So I went
uh-huh.
home and I dug. Harbor Freight sells those spring packs like
Sure,
on the
yeah,
back wall kind of deal.
uh-huh.
Went in there within 2 minutes, I had this thing working, and I'm like, perfect, works
Isn't it
for
amazing?
$10, and it's a cool Art Deco stapler.
I have that same level of I just want to make it work for like old like tabletop games. So like I fixed a Simon like the old Simon from the 70s,
Right?
and the satisfaction of that thing working again. I've never felt anything like that in my life.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's the greatest feeling in the world when you take something that somebody gave up on and was just selling to get rid of it, and I opened it up and I could immediately tell what was wrong, and I was like, all right, well, this is going to be the first thing I ever fix this way. And it was, and it works. And I still have it. It still works. It's on my bookcase now. And I'm like, I could sell this, but I kind of don't want to sell it because I made it work. Like this one, maybe I'll do another one. So I bought another broken one on eBay, and that one I'm going to sell.
There
But
you go.
this one, this is mine. I fixed like a Coleco football, you know, fixed everything inside of it, resoldered a power transistor, and then just redid the battery. It was missing battery connectors. That's why it wasn't working. Four of the battery connectors were missing. I made new battery connectors. I soldered the whole thing up, put it back together, turned it on, beep 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 beep, and I'm like, there we go, another thing fixed. And
Yeah.
that what you did with the stapler, it just felt the same way for me with those. It's like, yeah, these were all just given up on, and now somebody will enjoy them, or I have them on display. Like I kind of like having them. It's kind of cool. Like, oh yeah, people look at it and go, oh, I had that as a kid.
Right.
That nostalgia is a powerful thing, man.
It sure is. And I didn't realize it. I guess you don't realize it until you get old enough to have nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, look at the lamp that you made for the Enlighten Us challenge, which I keep seeing behind us when you make, with the average donut warmer. You have even the design of that. There's a very 1950s
Sure.
space thing that went on with the design of that, and it's like you can tell what people like when you let them design their own thing. You
Yeah, I would love to design product, like just design product. Like
know.
make things look the way that I think that they should look. But I don't know. I don't know if there's any money in that. So I guess there is because I'm doing a razor blade holder, right? The way I
Yeah.
want it to look. So I guess maybe it's just different scale. But I think even furniture design would be cool to do. But I like metal things. So
You really do.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. That's an expensive proposition is to start making a lot of furniture out of metals. Very, very expensive.
Do you get a big rush? I've always wondered this, and I've never actually asked you this. Do you get a big rush of orders for like Father's Day, for like in June, for like graduations, or is it, or is your business like heavily? I imagine a majority of your stuff is Christmas, but like,
Absolutely.
is
Yeah.
there are there other parts of the year where it's like things really pop off for a little while, even if it's a shorter pop?
Yeah. The Father's Day is the biggest.
Mhm. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And then police graduations
Oh.
because I make so many thin blue line pens. So police graduation gifts, that's a big one. There's typically, I think there's like two of those a year.
Mhm.
So But Christmas for sure is like as soon as I start hit like mid October,
Mhm.
I feel like I just vanish off of Instagram. Like you just don't
Oh,
see
it
me
was great.
anywhere.
It was great. Like even on the podcast, Christy and Dean would be like, "What are you working on this week?" And you would just go, "Do I really have to say I've been working on pens?" Like it's
Right.
just
Yeah,
pens.
there's nothing else happening. Yeah. Yeah,
It's
it's
pens. It's nothing but pens, and it's not going to be anything but pens for at least weeks, if
yeah.
not months.
I'm always like, can we just skip my part and let's talk about what you guys are doing? You know,
Yeah.
like
At that part of the year, you should just intro that segment and go, "Okay, I've been working on pens. I'm done. What are you working on, Dean?"
right, exactly.
Dean will be like building the Eiffel Tower out of like leather scraps or some crazy shit because that's how Dean is now. He's like a mad scientist.
Yeah, every time I opened up Instagram today and he's like stripping down some Jordans. I'm like, what is going on? Like he's all over the place, you know?
I identify more with that kind of making though. Like the other day I was working on just a straight up, no particular reason art project.
Right.
I haven't gotten to take beauty shots of it because it's been raining for 2 days, and my beauty shots, it's not like my old shop, so I have to go outside to take my beauty shots. So I'm waiting for the weather to get nicer. But I enjoyed making it so much, but it's so random. Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh look, what are you making? What? Like, I mean, it looks cool, but what are you making? Like, what is that? So
I feel like because me being full time, like full time maker or whatever you want to call it, produce, manufacturer, I don't get the same free time that people do to make what they want to make. So like Dean, for example, he works a normal job. He comes home and his main product that he wants or main project that he wants to do is like those shoes. So I feel like sort of envious of that because I'm like, oh well, like he can devote the time to it because he's already punched the clock and but then I
right,
realized like, no, you're an idiot. You can do it whenever you want. You just have to set time aside for it, you know?
yeah.
So,
Do you find that that's I find personally I find it really difficult to get motivated to make stuff for myself. Like, I
yeah,
really do. Like, as much as I enjoy doing it, like, I've enjoyed the hell out of this art project that I just finished. I enjoyed it from start to finish. Every step of it produced more toward the result, and it was just super duper rewarding, and I loved it. But I don't give myself enough time for that stuff. I readily admit it. I've told people this. If I'm making something, it's either going to go into a piece of content or go out to a client.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
me.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I hate it. I hate it, and I don't know what to do. And if anybody has any suggestions, I'm open to them. If anybody wants to shoot me an email with a suggestion or a message on Instagram with a suggestion, I'm open to suggestions about how I can get better about that. Because like I'm very excited about a particular project that I bought the supplies for, and they're all sitting on my table inside. I can't get motivated to start it because it's not going to make me money, and that's terrible. Like I'm
Yeah.
excited about the project. I want to do this. I'm not excited about getting it done. I'm just
Yeah.
not.
That's exactly how I am. Like I feel like I'm wasting time by using time on myself,
Yes.
right? I'm like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I should be making something that sells, or I should be making some, I don't know. I guess it's a hang up.
I've spent so many years trying to move the needle that now when something doesn't move the needle, it's like I don't want to do it. Like it's a way. It's not a good use of my time.
Right.
It's just that's a stupid way to think of things.
Yeah.
I wish I could be more like Jeff. I really do. Like Jeff is exploring and doing interesting things and he's trying new things and it's like I just don't have that in me the way he does. I don't. I don't think I ever will. It's just not my mindset. I've tried. I've had fun. I have fun when I do it. But getting over the hump of here's all your materials, get started, and it's like, eh, there's no payoff at the end other than the satisfaction of a job well done. Well, that's great, but that's I don't have a job right now, so I don't need a job well done. I need a job that pays.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think sometimes I fall into like when I decided to restore my milling machine, that was like a 2 month thing that really took away from business, right? Because I was like, number one, I didn't have a milling machine at the time, and number two, because I was just wasting so many hours. But then when you look back, you're like, oh, I didn't waste them. This thing is way better. It's but there wasn't the payoff of like, oh, I finished it and got handed a big check. It was
Right.
so I totally I agree with you that I'm very similar to you in that vein where
It's
it's tough to do it.
I watch content creators, people that are primarily content creators, and they don't have that problem. And I've talked to a couple of them, and they're like, "Oh, I don't have that problem. It's hard for me to relate." And I'm like, "You don't have that problem because when you make something, you're making content.
Right.
Like you're filming everything you do. Rarely, if you ask a content creator how much making they do outside of content creation, the answer is usually none or very little.
Right.
Right? So the reason you guys don't have that problem is because you're making content out of all of it. And I'm not judging you for it, but I'm just saying that I'm not making content out of everything. And I don't want to make content out of everything I make. I mean, I kind of do, but I also want to get these things if I'm motivated enough to get off my ass and actually do something. The last thing I want to do is juggle cameras to get stuff done.
Yeah, that's why you don't see very many reels of pin making. It's because I'm just trying
Exactly.
to get it done.
Right. Like you and the flip side of that is you're not going to sit there in March and make a pen just so you can film it
Right.
because that's not your mindset. You don't do that. You make pens when people need pens and order pens. So
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
see, this is you and I. This is why you and I think this is why you and I get along so well because you and I are, for better or worse, we think a lot alike. You obviously have a much bigger business than I will ever have, and you have a much more focused market. You you're just more involved, and your business is a bigger part of what you are than mine is. But we do think about things the same way, and it's kind of funny because I can hear you saying stuff, going, "Yeah, that's me. That's me.
Right.
That's me." When you meet a kindred spirit, you hang on to them for dear life because it's rare that you find someone where you go, "Oh my god, he gets me."
Yeah. Normally I'm like, look at this idiot. He's just like me.
I'm not the only idiot. Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Speaking of people who aren't idiots, no, we're not speaking of people who are not idiots. That's a terrible segue. But why don't we get over into things of the week, and we'll talk about some cool stuff. So why don't you go first, since you're the guest here?
Sure, sure. So I wanted to bring up it's a guy named his Instagram name is Crafty B. So it's underscore Crafty B, all one word underscore. And so he's an old tool and die maker. He retired, and then now he does like all kinds of foundry casting and machining and like hot rod parts, like gas caps, and just really cool stuff. I've learned a ton from him over the years on Instagram. He used to do like these Crafty Bee tips, like quick tips,
Hmm.
and I think they're in like the permanent bubble stories underneath it in his profile. So I think you can find him there. And he's just a wealth of knowledge with all that kind of stuff. And I noticed he started really pumping his YouTube channel, and everybody knows how rough it is to start a YouTube channel, and you're grinding and getting all these videos and projects done, and nobody's watching it. So I wanted to shout him out and him be the thing of the week. So go check him out. Check out his YouTube. Um, but he's a great follow. He's an energetic guy, and you can tell he's really into what he's got going on, that's what I love. When somebody's really into it, I can watch them do it. Um, so yeah, go check him out.
Cool. I will absolutely check him out. He's on YouTube at his YouTube handle is at kbrown6700, and his Instagram is underscore crafty, the letter B underscore. So you definitely want to check him out. Austin mentioned him earlier before we started, and I was looking through his stuff. Some of the stuff is pretty wild. Like it's cool stuff. I'm actually going to follow his YouTube account just so he has a couple of people following him. But definitely go check him out if you're into metal. I saw Austin was showing me a metal gas cap, and immediately made me think of Chris Powell. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. I'm sure Chris follows him for
uh,
sure.
I'd be willing to bet that if you could see YouTube followers, he's probably in there. This is a good one. There's a lot of interesting stuff. He made a metal Devo hat for a Frankenstein head. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it's
Uh,
like a shifter knob and stuff. So
yeah.
if you scroll way back, he's got a roadster that he cast like the windshield and the headlights, and like he made all these parts for it, and it was a gorgeous car, man. I love
Wow.
that car. When he sold it, I was like, I cannot believe he sold it. But he's just got some really cool stuff. Really, he's got good style, like the stuff that he makes looks cool, and it's just Yeah, just like we were talking about, like when people gave a crap about what things look like, not just what they did.
I also think it's interesting that he does cast stuff and machine stuff. Like usually you don't see usually people get very narrow into their niche. They either cast stuff or they machine it, and he seems to be cracking away at both, which I definitely respect. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
he's good. He's a talented guy. So give him a follow
cool
and
beans.
check out his stuff. I'm eventually gonna get him on the podcast because I wanna chat with him. But
But with you guys, you have to wait till he does one crazy project that you can say, "Okay, good, we want to talk to you about that. Let's go. Let's
yep,
have you on."
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
your format lends itself to that, but that's cool because then you'll have something guaranteed to talk about, and then you can transition into everything else. That's a good one. I like it, and I'm following. So good
Cool.
recommendation. My thing of the week is something that everyone's talking about, which is really kind of it's not even a cop out. It's just something that I legitimately just started playing with for the first time, and I had been playing with there's everyone's talking about artificial intelligence, AI. Is it going to kill this? Is it going to kill that? It's amazing here. It's amazing there. And I had been playing, oh wow, since probably May ish. Yeah, probably about May or June. I've been playing with OpenAI's Dolly 2, which is amazing. Like it blew my mind the first time I ran a couple of things through it. Talking about like making people out of nowhere and giving it crazy prompts and having it deliver pretty convincing results. And I started seeing people were using another one called Midjourney. And I was like, I don't really want to go through Discord like I'm happy with OpenAI's
Yeah,
Dolly and that's cool whatever. But then people started they started really using Midjourney, and Midjourney's improved. I think they're up to version 5.2 now or 4 point some. They've moved quite a few versions from when I first saw it. And yeah,
I think part of it too is that like people are getting good at learning what to prompt it
yes,
with, right? So like
yes,
there was a learning curve that so not only is the software better, it's also people have learned to make it work better.
100%. And I will tell you from experience that my first few queries were good, but the more I learn how to tell it what I want, the better the results are getting. So my thing of the week is absolutely Midjourney. And I sent Austin a couple of photos that I had it generate when I was first learning how to use it because I was like, okay, let's see what this looks like compared to the stuff from Dali. What I've learned, and this is really the difference between the two. Midjourney is very good at making photorealistic um, things out of thin air, whereas Dali is much better at making artistic. Dali is more accomplished, I should say, at making stylized stuff. So if you want, a picture of George Washington, ask ask Midjourney. But if you want a picture of George Washington in the style of Vincent Van Gogh, ask Dali. It'll probably do a better job. For now, I mean that's going to obviously change, but this stuff is incredible. It's
I can't
a
wait.
David Picciuto. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I can't wait until you can be like it will do a video like so like those 1930 scenes you sent to me that it made the picture like
Everything starts moving.
yeah, that would
Yeah,
be killer.
I I was thinking that when I saw that too. I was like, wow, imagine if this could move.
Right,
And if you look really close, like I noticed, I wanted to see like how much thought in quotes
right.
the AI puts into what it produces. So I looked really close, and there are a couple of like obvious errors in that photo, but
Mhm.
unless you're looking for them, you will never see them. And
Yeah,
if I'm doing a design for a customer, I can say, all right, make me this, and use that to mock up a design. Like if I was thinking those 1940s pictures that I sent you would be perfect on like a can of coffee from New York City.
yeah,
Like just an old
definitely.
school or like a coffee branding thing, like, oh look, like old school coffee, and just it's so incredible. And I've had so much fun playing with it. It's an incredible, incredible thing. And I know people are scared that it's going to take some artist job or some whatever. I get it. I'm not even going to have that discussion because I have definite opinions and some of you aren't going to like them. But what I will say is don't. don't pass up the opportunity to start learning how this stuff works because it's not going anywhere. If anything, I mean, Microsoft just debuted a new version of Bing that is essentially based on Chat GPT, which is from OpenAI also, and it's wild. Like you can have a conversation with the search engine. So you could say, "Hey, I have these ingredients. Can you give me a recipe that works with it?"
Wow.
And it'll give you the recipe. And then the next thing you could say is, "What if I needed to make that for 8 people? How much of each thing would I need?" And it'll adjust the recipe and give you the recipe over. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but if you look at that as anything but this is kind of amazing, you might be in big trouble over the next couple of years because that's the way it's going.
I'm
Imagine when
so
you
close to having Tony Stark's workshop. I can
oh,
just feel it.
right there, right there. The computer in Star Trek, all the stuff that everybody always wanted, right? All that stuff that we always wanted, the ever-present computer that could answer every question, do things for you. I mean, I watched a video the other day, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but they asked ChatGPT to write them a program in BASIC on a Commodore 64, and it worked.
Wow. That's
And I was
crazy,
like,
man.
I'm like, this is it. This is it. Like if you have a specialized skill, and this is a piece of warning for people, if you have a specialized skill that can be replaced with one line queries in an AI, I'm very sorry for you.
Yeah.
You're the people that should be scared. Artists, you'll never replace artists with AI. For the people that want art, they're always going to want art. But there's a lot of stuff that AI is going to enable people who aren't experts to do, and that's exciting.
Yeah. I've already
You
started making Terminator machines. So that way once it's good enough, I can release these babies.
Austin already has like a whole bunch of endoskeletons sitting in the freaking shop just waiting for a brain. It's funny. He wants Terminator. He's going to end up with Megan. um, Austin, it has been an absolute hoot chatting with you. I love chatting with you anyway, and I just like you know what? Let's have Austin on this week. Why the hell not? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Thanks
you
for
want to come on?
inviting me
You
on,
want to come
man.
on tomorrow? Sure. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. That's when you invited me, I'm like, oh, are you changing the name to Digital Luddite
Go back.
instead of
Somebody actually suggested like just put it back to because we make and go back to the way it was. I'm like, because we make is dead, but I may just go with content creators and people who are presences
well,
on the internet. I think
yeah. I mean, obviously
whatever.
we're all using digital forms at
Exactly.
some level. I mean, it's not I'm not I'm not Jeff or somebody like that, but
Hmm.
I am using some digital formats, that's for sure.
Sure, 100%. I mean, you can't avoid it at this point. Even like I said before, even straight up content creators, that's digital creativity. Content creation is digital creativity, as far as I'm concerned. So that's my excuse for having people on that aren't makers. So get used to it, guys. It's happening. Austin, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you and see what you're up to and tease you about your pens or whatever they need to tease you about? Hey everyone, Future Vincent here. You may have realized that I screwed up pretty big in this recording and didn't read the Hall of Fame. I was involved in the conversation. It was a good conversation. So let me rectify that right now. Here we go. People that support this show financially are Matthew Serio of Artigiano Serio, Big Al Schultz of New York Woodworks, Tori Decker of Tori Did It, Ed Swanson of Ed's Clocks and More, Jake Drews of Make with Jake, Megan Chris from Onyx Designs Woodwork, Chris Shidneri of Warren Works, Jeff Stein, aka A Weird Guy, Kim and Garrett from Kim and Garrett Make It, Rory Langefeld of RLO Woodworks and DIY, Robert J. Keller, Rebecca Cole of Bexy Designs, Brian Arsenault, the Seven Hills Maker, Lars Coleman of Colorado Multicraft, Dave Bauer of Dave Bauer Art, Nick Birchtold of Birchtold Design Build, Jeremy Speast, Mike from Pixels to Prototype, Donald LeBlanc of Fun with Woodworking, Grant Alexander from the Clamp Podcast, Brad Harrison of Brad's Customs, and Billy Polton of Polton Projects. Thank you to all the people that support the show financially. If you can't support the show financially, that's fine too. Just share the show, tell someone about it, or even write a review, because every little bit you do to help me promote this show helps tremendously. And now back to the end of the podcast.
Sure, man. So High Caliber Craftsman everywhere. And then if I have a separate Instagram that I kind of do my, it's a little more like behind the scene kind of stuff, what I'm making, what I'm playing around with. That's High Caliber Craftsman Builds Instagram.
Hmm.
And then I also do a podcast with Dean Duplantis and Christy from Twisted Twine Woodworking, and it's called Making Our Way.
Yep, which is one of my favorite podcasts. It's always cool. Like I feel like almost every podcast I listen to is someone I know now, and I'm
Yeah.
totally cool with that. Like I'm totally cool with just listening to people I know. Just shoot the shit. You guys, I was telling I created a group chat a couple of weeks ago with the three of you. I'm like, I cannot believe you guys just did this to me, but I just spent an hour and 20 minutes listening to a guy talk about fly fishing, and I don't give a shit about fishing at all. Like, I mean, that's how good you guys are at what you do. Like, you made me give a damn about fly fishing. It's like, and I'll be honest with you, you guys have had a lot of guests where I start up the app, when I start up my podcast app, I see your podcast come up on Tuesday morning, and I look at the guest, and I'm like, ugh, why the
Right.
hell would I want to listen to that? And I'm like, screw it, just listen. And every single freaking time, I'm like, damn, that was interesting. Like, that's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, I shouldn't be interested in this. Why do I care?
This is gonna sound totally shitty as me as one of the podcast co-hosts, but Dean or Christy will suggest somebody, and I'm like, why the fuck do I want to talk? Oh, sorry, am I allowed to cuss? I don't. Bleep me
It's
out.
okay.
Why would I want to talk to that person? And then we have them on, and I was like, oh, that was great. Like
Yeah,
it's surprising, and I try to have an open. Of course, I'm open minded when they get
sure.
on there, but
You have to be.
yeah, and so I definitely I definitely feel and understand where people are coming from, but
Yeah.
I think we can spin it enough to make it enjoyable that they can listen to, and it's and
I
if
think
not, you can just listen to us in the beginning and the end and skip the guest if you have to.
I feel like what you guys do really, really well, and this is what I love about Making Our Way, and it's why I'm one of your patrons. I feel like what you guys do really, really well is you figure out what the guest is, where the guest's passion is, like what part of what they do is their passion, and you just kind of crack it open just a little bit, and they Kool-Aid man right out of it. It's like
Right.
boom. Like once you crack the shell, all the egg just comes right out, and you just let them go. And I think it's fantastic what you guys do. I also like that the guests. I like that you guys have distinct time where you allow yourself just to talk to each other. I think it's good. I totally enjoy it. Like I said, that's why I'm a patron. And if you haven't listened to Making Our Way, you definitely need to check it out. It's wherever you get your podcasts. They drop every Tuesday morning. And apparently the after show is thing of legend. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really listen to anyone's after show. I barely have enough time for the podcast, but
Right.
apparently the after show is freaking legendary for Making Our Way. So you may want to become a patron just so you can hear that. Which is patreon.com/making our way. So you can go check that out also. Austin, it's been an absolute hoot, my friend. And I can't wait. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for your next product drop. I literally I want number one. I want literally the first one you sell to be to me. And I want a number one stamped on it so that I know that I got the first one. I want the first one. I am excited beyond belief about it. So
That's awesome.
that,
Thanks, man. I
yeah, my
appreciate you having me on. It's
Oh,
been fun.
absolutely.
I feel like
Absolutely.
we haven't talked enough here recently that because normally, well, of course we do, but it's chat, it's
Yeah.
text.
Yeah.
So this has been fun.
I haven't I'm not gonna lie, and I think anyone that follows me or chats with me knows I've had some ups and downs the last couple of months, and I've just been kind of spending a lot of time just hibernating and being quiet and just kind of laying off things a little bit. And it's kind of like I think that's what I needed. I think I just needed to detach from the world a little bit. So my
Sure.
apologies for that. I am a shitty friend. I readily admit that I've been a shitty friend to a lot of people, but I'll be back at some point, back to normal. But you know, it happens. It
Yeah,
happens. But
of course.
no,
That's the
just know that
cycle.
if I don't talk to y'all every day, I still love every one of you. Aw, warm, fuzzy, pink, puffy hearts. Hold on, I'll make the little heart symbol. That's a terrible heart. I can't do that. Whatever. It's too hard to do it on camera.
Get it done.
Great. Now it's like a triangle. Nice. Everybody, it has been an absolute pleasure. Catch you all next week. I don't know who the guest is. I didn't know who the guest was going to be this week. And look what I brought you. I brought you Austin freaking Saunders. I mean, come on. Come on. On short notice, I brought you Austin freaking Saunders. But I'll have somebody next week. I have an idea. I have two ideas. I just got to see if they're available. So one way or the other, there will be a show. So the people that are paying, you're going to get your money's worth. Until then, have a great week, everybody, and I'll chat with you then.